I call Phil Twyford.
It's a very good choice from a crowded field, Mr. Speaker. The thing that's kind of most galling about the truncated Select Committee timeframe for this bill is that, Mr. Speaker, the National Government's been denying that property speculation in the Auckland housing market is a problem, denying it for the last 3 years. And now they bring to the House this bill, a tax bill, probably the last kind of bill that they should be rushing through the legislative process with a shortened Select Committee hearing time, when there has been intense public debate for at least the last 3 years about the effect of property speculation in Auckland. And it didn't need to be this way. It didn't need to be a truncated Select Committee hearing period. Tax bills of any deserve the right kind of scrutiny, expert evidence, officials giving considered advice to the Select Committee, the chance to really tease out the provisions of the bill. Because goodness knows, Mr. Speaker, this bill is fraught with problems. And the problem we've got with a shortened time period is that we won't actually do the much needed job of improving the bill, going through it clause by clause, putting it under the microscope and trying to improve it. And if we don't do that, there's every chance that we'll be back in the House here at a later stage, fixing those mistakes and rectifying the errors. Mr. Speaker, in the papers supporting this debate, the Treasury makes it clear that they think that this bill, with the so-called bright line test, requiring people who purchase and on-sell a property within 2 years will pay income tax on the capital gain. Treasury say that they think that it will raise about $5 million a year. They say that if there wasn't that avoidance...
I just warn the member that he needs to restrict his comments to the issue of the shortened time frame for debate before the Select Committee, not the value of the bill, his view on the bill, solely on the shortened time frame. He seems to be wandering away at the moment.
So, sir, if we consider that what Treasury said that I was just referring to, how on earth, in a truncated time frame, are we going to get the proper analysis?
Take your seat.
From economists like Tony Alexander of the BNZ, who I think said when this policy was announced, when the bill was foreshadowed by the government, he said that he didn't think that it would have any effect. How are we going to get people like Tony Alexander to come along and do the analysis and check the work that Treasury's been doing? John Shewan, who's one of the most influential of the tax advisors that the government uses, who also, by the way, said that he didn't think that this bill would have much effect at all on house prices and it certainly wouldn't deter speculators. That kind of technical expertise is exactly what we want to see at the Select Committee. And if we don't have enough time at Select Committee to go through this bill and give it the scrutiny it deserves, then the glaring errors and loopholes that are evident in this bill, sir, will never get fixed. As Grant Robertson said, it's going to be retrospective anyway. It's been so ham-fisted, the handling of this bill. The government's made a commitment that it's going to come into effect on October the 1st. And there's no shortage of commentators who have observed that the frenzy of speculative buying and selling in the Auckland housing market that we can see right now is a direct response to the fact that people are anticipating this bill coming in on October the 1st. So there's an imperative now to see that the bill does pass into law. But because of the government's ham-fisted management of the legislative process, it's going to be retrospective, and no one likes that. But why rush it now? If it's going to be retrospective, you may as well take it through a proper select committee process and air the issues. Give the select committee the time to do their work. After all, Mr Speaker, we have a unicameral parliament. We don't have many of the other checks and balances. The select committee process is one of the few protections we have against the very inferior lawmaking that has been a characteristic of this government's time in office. We are constantly coming back to fix up the messes that Nick Smith and others have made with legislation that they've brought to this House. And yet here we are, we're being asked to do it again. We're being asked to push a taxation bill that is actually a reasonably complex bill to be pushed through and not given the proper select scrutiny. This bill is hopeless, sir, and there are no shortage of commentators, not just members on this side of the House, but experts who have pointed out that there are real flaws with the bill. At its heart is a loophole that you could drive a bus through, and that is the fact that if the very intent of the bill is to stop or to reduce property speculation, but there's that huge loophole, and that is the fact that people only need to hold on to it for properties for 2 years and a day to avoid the provisions of the bill. That needs to be properly scrutinised, and we need to see the modelling about how many speculators will get caught by this bill. We want to see what the modelling is, that based on Treasury analysis about how many speculators will get caught, how much money will be brought in by this tax, and if we don't have the time at Select Committee, sir, we're never going to really unearth that. This bill is being rushed through. It was like so much of the legislation that has been brought to the House by this government on housing. It has been cobbled together at the last minute because of the polls and because of the media. And as a result of that shambolic political management, we're being asked to support a reduced select committee process that undoubtedly will produce an inferior result. Thank you.
I call Eugenie Sage.